Saturday or Sunday is not a Sabbath, and I'm about to prove that in this short video. But not only this, I will also show you when exactly is the true Sabbath day. This knowledge may either give you goosebumps or upset you. It all depends on your love for the Holy Bible. If you have never heard of lunisolar calendar, then it's my pure pleasure to tell you about it today. I've spent many months studying this subject, and I was skeptical just like you are right now, but at the end of the day, truth is truth and it must be told. There are over 100 verses that refer to this calendar, but in this video I will use only 10 of them, and I believe that's more than I need. If there are over 100 verses that support this calendar, then how many more do you need to understand that God is the creator of our calendar and He also controls the time? These 10 verses that I mentioned come from 9 different books of the Bible, so that you can see that this calendar is consistent from Genesis to Revelation and it does not change, just like our God. What we cannot say about our man-made pagan unbiblical calendar that has been manipulated multiple times and it's still far from perfect. Anyway, let me analyze our 10 verses. Let me start with the easiest and leave the difficult ones for the end, so that first you will get the basics and the proper understanding of how this calendar works. Luckily, our first verse is located at the very beginning of the Bible and talks about the basics. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." Just from this verse alone we can build an entire biblical calendar. As you can see, the sun and the moon have been created to be observed and used to count the time. So let's break it down. The job of the moon is to show us the length of the weeks and months, and the job of the sun is to show us the length of the days and years. So the main rule says observation over calculation, and even the Merriam-Webster dictionary states that a month is a measure of time corresponding nearly to the period of the moon's revolution and amounting to approximately 4 weeks or 30 days or 1/12 of a year. But let's go back to our verse. Generally, there are 7 biblical units of time. Number 7 is not a coincidence here. As I showed you before, the moon is for the weeks and months, and the sun is for the days and years. And basically, that's all you need to count the time. How do I know this? Because God showed us the same pattern in the very beginning of the Holy Bible. Days and years are easy to understand, but signs and seasons need more explanation. The same Hebrew word for signs can be found in the next book and explains what exactly a sign is. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day He rested and was refreshed. As for seasons, some translate it as seasons of the year, but biblically speaking, there are festivals that are based on the moon observation. To prove this, I will use another verse from our list where the same Hebrew word was used. He appointed the moon for seasons, the sun knoweth he's going down. Funny enough, the last book of the Bible also talks about the 4 units of time. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. And this is what I'm calling the consistency of the Holy Bible. So the first 2 verses helped us to pull out the basics, but the 3rd verse will help us to build the calendar. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, said the Lord. This verse is an unfulfilled prophecy, and it talks about the future Millenium of Jesus Christ. So the new moon is the first day of the month, and the Sabbath is always the 7th day of the week. Worship will take place from new moon to new moon and from Sabbath to Sabbath. And to put it in simple words, we will worship God every month and every week. Isn't that amazing? That the true biblical calendar will be finally restored with the second coming of Jesus Christ. But before this happens, we must educate and prepare ourselves not to be surprised that what we followed so far was a pure lie. So what else we will do in the Millennium of Jesus Christ? Believe it or not, but you will keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Our next verse is again a beautiful unfulfilled prophecy. And it shall come to pass that every one that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And you guessed it, this feast will be based on none else but this very calendar. Even in the time of Moses, this calendar was used to keep the same feast. Our 5th verse talks about the same festival but in a slightly different way. Also in the 15th day of the 7th month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the 1st day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. As you can see, everything fits perfectly. Can you apply the same verse to the Gregorian calendar? I don't think so. Now let's jump to the verse number 6 and see how it will work with our calendar. Now they began on the 1st day of the 1st month to sanctify, and on the 8th day of the month came they to the porch of the Lord. So they sanctified the house of the Lord in 8 days, and in the 16th day of the 1st month they made an end. Again, no confusion and no need for mental gymnastics, because this Creator's calendar is well synchronized with Bible verses. But you may ask, how do we know which one is the 1st day of the month? Well, our 7th verse can explain this quite well. Let me show you. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the 2nd day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, Wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meat, neither yesterday nor today? From this verse you can clearly see that the new moon is always the 1st day of the month. New moon was not an ordinary day, and we can find out more about this in our 8th verse. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon, in the time appointed, on the solemn feast day. This trumpet could also be heard on the full moon, which is here translated as time appointed. And according to some scholars, that was most likely the 1st day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or Feast of Passover. So was there a big difference between the new moon and a Sabbath? Well, not really. Our 9th verse explained that both of these days were very important to our God. Thus said the Lord God, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened, and in the day of the new moon it shall be opened. Both new moon and Sabbath were special days on God's calendar, and any type of business activity were forbidden, which you can read more about from the book of Amos, chapter 8, verse 5. And finally, our last verse, which for some reasons is quite problematic and difficult to explain. And it came to pass on the 2nd Sabbath after the 1st, that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. I would like you to focus on the words marked in red. As you can see from the Interlinear Bible, they are correctly translated in KJV. But because these words don't fit the Gregorian calendar, some translators decided to change the meaning of this verse. And we can see that, for example, in the most corrupted Bible of our times, which is obviously NIV. But not only NIV got it wrong, so make sure that you have the correct Bible. So what exactly does the 2nd Sabbath after the 1st mean? Biblical scholars have few theories that can explain this mysterious verse. The 1st Sabbath of the 2nd month of the Jewish year, the 1st Sabbath after the 2nd day of the Passover, the 1st Sabbath in the 2nd year of the sabbatical cycle of 7 years, the 1st Sabbath of the 2nd half of the civil Jewish year, the 2nd Sabbath of the Feast of Pentecost. As for me, I like to keep things simple, so in my humble opinion, 2nd Sabbath after the 1st means 2nd Sabbath after the 1st. But whatever this verse means doesn't change the fact that it can only be applied to God's calendar, and that's what matters here. So here you go, biblical calendar, made by God and craftily changed by man. But I'm not worried about this much, because there are over 100 verses that support this calendar and none that support Gregorian. Imagine that Vatican had never existed and they had never made this Gregorian calendar. What calendar would you follow then? The answer is God's calendar. Because this calendar existed from the beginning of the universe and is still in use today by many countries with some modifications. Now what I would like you to do is to make a choice. Do you follow what God created or what man fabricated? Lunisolar calendar comes directly from the Bible, while Gregorian simply does not. Biblical calendar is based on moon and sun, but Gregorian calendar is only synchronized with the sun. Biblical month has 29 or 30 days, but Gregorian month can have up to 4 different lengths. Lunar month always starts from new moon, while first day of the month in pagan calendar is based on nothing. Sabbaths on biblical calendar are based on moon phase, while non-working days on Gregorian calendar are based on paganism, traditions, and Vatican doctrines. Majority of days and months on lunisolar calendar were numbered, while Gregorian calendar adopted names for all days and months which came from either pagan gods, festivals, emperors, or names of the planets. All the 7 biblical festivals are well synchronized with the lunisolar calendar, but on the Gregorian they cannot be tracked, so Vatican created their own fake happy days. And the last reason why you should reject Gregorian calendar is that this calendar will be completely destroyed in the Millennium of Jesus Christ, while lunisolar will be restored. There will not be 2 different calendars in God's kingdom, as nothing unclean can come close to Him. So make your decision today which one you want to follow, preach, and defend. And remember, Muslims have Friday, Jews have Saturday, and Catholics have Sunday. But born-again Christians have the truth from the Holy Bible, and thank God for that.